you are those Americans. You are the SS American Memorial. Part of our mission here at this ranch, and I guess our family, is about history and about awareness. And for the last number of years, we've been taking time to pay tribute to various portions of our history. And this year, we take the Vietnam era. The timeline was between 1954 and 1975. The event was called the Indochina, aka Vietnam War. Its origins go back to 1945 at the end of World War II, when North Vietnam's communist leader Ho Chi Minh claimed independence from France, beginning a war between the North regime in Hanoi and the French-backed regime in Saigon, located in South Vietnam. Under President Harry S. Truman, the U.S. government provided covert military and financial aid to the French. The rationale was that a communist victory in Indochina would precipitate the spread of communism throughout Southeast Asia, a serious concern in the minds of all Western leaders due to the recent defeat of Communist German World War II regime less than 10 years prior. No event in American history is more misunderstood than the Vietnam War. It was misreported then, and it is misremembered now. Rarely have so many people been so wrong about so much. Never have the consequences of their misunderstanding been so tragic. President Richard M. Nixon. Over 9 million military personnel served on active duty during the conflict official Vietnam era from August 5, 1964 to May 7, 1975. 240 men were awarded the Medal of Honor. Over 58,000 were killed. Over 75,000 were severely disabled. Over 23,000 were 100% disabled. Over 55,000 lost limbs, and over 1,000 sustained multiple amputations. Of those killed, 61% were younger than 21. Over 11,000 of those killed were younger than 20 years old. After the Vietnam War, Vietnam veterans were portrayed by the media as drug-addicted misfits sitting on street corners as beggars. 97% of Vietnam veterans were honorably discharged. 91% of Vietnam veterans say they are glad they served. 74% say they would serve again, even knowing the outcome. Vietnam veterans have a lower unemployment rate than the same non-vet age group. Vietnam veterans' personal income exceeds that of our non-veteran age group by more than 18%. 87% of Americans hold Vietnam veterans in high esteem. There is no difference in drug uses between Vietnam veterans and non-Vietnam veterans of the same age group. Vietnam veterans are less likely to be in prison. Only 0.5% of Vietnam veterans have been jailed for crimes. 85% of Vietnam veterans made successful transitions to civilian life. Common Vietnam War myths. Common belief is that most Vietnam veterans were drafted. 2/3 of the men who served in Vietnam were volunteers. By comparison, 2/3 of the men who served in World War II were drafted. Approximately 70% of those killed in Vietnam were volunteers. A common belief is that the fighting in Vietnam was not as intense as World War II. The fact is, the average infantryman in South Pacific during World War II saw about 40 days of combat in 4 years. The average infantryman in Vietnam saw about 240 days of combat in 1 year, thanks to the mobility of the helicopter. Myth: the United States lost the war in Vietnam. Fact: the American military was not defeated in Vietnam. The American military did not lose a battle of any consequence. From a military standpoint, it was almost unprecedented performance. The United States did not lose the war in Vietnam. The South Vietnamese did. The fall of Saigon happened April 30th, 1975, 2 years after the American military left Vietnam. The last American troops departed in their entirety 29 March of 1973. So how could we lose a war that we had already stopped fighting? We fought to an agreed stalemate. The peace settlement was signed in Paris 27 January 1973. It called for a release of all U.S. prisoners, withdrawal of U.S. forces, and limitation on both sides inside South Vietnam, and a commitment to peaceful reunification. The 140,000 evacuees in April 1975 during the fall of Saigon consisted almost entirely of civilians and Vietnamese military, not American military running for their lives as depicted by the media. The Tet Offensive was a total defeat of communists on all fronts. It resulted in the death of some 45,000 North Vietnamese troops and the complete, if not destruction, of the Viet Cong elements in South Vietnam. The organization of the Viet Cong units in South never recovered. The Tet Offensive succeeded on only one front, and that was the news front and the political arena. This was another example in the Vietnam War of an inaccuracy becoming the perceived truth. However, inaccurately reported, the news media made the Tet Offensive famous. The United States did not lose the Vietnam War. The South Vietnamese did after the democratically controlled U.S. Congress cut off funding. The South Vietnamese ran out of fuel, ammunition, and other supplies because of a lack of support from Congress, while the North Vietnamese were very well supplied by China and Soviet Union. Traditionally, America has always supported its armed forces and shown great respect for those in uniform. In 1919, at the end of World War I, the Doughboys returned home from Europe to a ticker-tape victory, parades, marching band, speeches, and the goodwill of all Americans. Additionally, when the soldiers returned home from World War II and the Korean War, they retreated as heroes. A euphoric atmosphere overtook the nation, and celebrations were held in their honor all around the country. Unfurled American flags that decorated streets and homes could be seen waving in the breeze. It was as if they, too, were welcoming home the GIs. The relieving continued nonstop for weeks. It seemed as though the nation and its citizens could not do enough for returning servicemen and women. A grateful nation was anxious to show its admiration and support to returning soldiers. Unfortunately, this was not the case when the Vietnam veterans returned home from Vietnam. As a result of America's portrayed loss by the media in Vietnam, there was a misperception that the men who fought there did not measure up to their predecessors in the World War II and Korea. Perhaps the cruelest was the treatment of the returning soldiers. Unlike the hero status given to the returning soldiers from World War II and the warriors of today, the soldiers that served in Vietnam were portrayed as baby killers, psychos, drug addicts, and warmongers. It was not uncommon scene for returning soldiers to be confronted at airports by protesters carrying signs with anti-war slogans. The protesters used the signs to attack the soldiers and even threw urine on the veterans. In some instances, the soldiers were refused service in restaurants. This common sight on the streets of America during the Vietnam War years was in no way reminiscent of the homecoming given to the returning soldiers from previous wars and today. No, unlike the soldiers who had fought in other wars, the Vietnam veterans from Vietnam returned home not to find parades, bands, speeches, or celebrations. In 1977, President Jimmy Carter, in his first day in office, fulfilled a campaign promise by granting unconditional pardons to hundreds of thousands who evaded the draft during the Vietnam War by fleeing the country or by failing to register. All in all, about 100,000 Americans went abroad in late 1960s and early 70s to avoid being called up. Some 90% went to Canada. For its part, the U.S. government continued to prosecute draft evaders after the Vietnam War ended. A total of 2,517 men were accused of violating draft laws, while another 360,000 were never formally charged. Those who fled to Canada face prison sentences if they choose to return home. In the end, an estimated 50,000 draft dodgers settled permanently in Canada. The Carter amnesty generated a good deal of criticism, especially from veterans groups. Although the draft ended in 1973, desertion remains an issue as Americans continue to fight wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. It has been said that the character of an individual is measured in how he acts when no one is looking. In 2010, a veteran visited me, and he left an envelope pertaining to his time served. He figured since I enjoyed keeping history records that I'd want it. It was not until 2014, as I was going through a large accumulation of numerous veterans' history documents, that I reviewed that particular veterans folder. In it, I found a letter written to, at the time, to President Jimmy Carter. And I read.
January 27th, 1977. The President of the United States, the White House. Mr. President, I have been raised and taught that there are only three things that are worth sacrificing one's life for. 1, the freedom to worship my Lord and God. 2, the wonderful country I live in. And 3, my family. I have tried to instill these beliefs in my 2 sons and daughter. This has not been an easy thing to do, since so many people do not believe it is their duty to defend any of the above 3. I firmly believe that if a person does not believe his country is worth defending, then they do not have the right to live here. The only reason this United States is the greatest country in the world is because of the people who are willing to die for their beliefs. I think you will have to admit that there have been many lives shed. With just one single sweep of your pen, you have erased over 200 years of dignity and pride. If our president does not believe this country is worth fighting for, then what are we to believe? Mr. President, I bestow upon you my honorable discharge. Give it to a deserter or draft dodger. Let them know that it was earned with honor and dignity, but is now being returned in shame.
Today, on this 4th of July, 2016, at the SS American Memorial, on behalf of all these Americans, we humbly submit our apology to you Vietnam veteran warriors.
Thank you, Craig and Savannah. The table that stands before you to my left front is a place of honor. In setting this table, we acknowledge those missing from our celebration tonight, and we remember them well. The table is small. It is set for one, symbolizing the vulnerability of a lone prisoner against his captors. Remember. The tablecloth is white, symbolizing purity of intention in responding to the nation's call to arms. The chair is empty, for they are not here. The wine glass is inverted. They cannot toast with us this day. The slices of lemon reminding us of their bitter sufferings. The grains of salt representing the countless tears of the families. The single rose, red rose, reminding us of those loved ones who kept the faith, awaiting their return. The burning candle and yellow ribbon symbolizing everlasting hope of a reunion with the missing. All who have served alongside them, we know, have donned the same proud uniform, being sworn to the same faith and allegiance. We will never forget their sacrifice. Remember until the day they return home or find eternal peace, we will remember. Ladies and gentlemen, we are privileged to include a tribute to honor the life of one of our own fallen warriors. As part of this general celebration, we are fortunate to have with us today members of his family from Kentucky. Master Chief Gregory Ray Armstrong, also known as Big Lou. February 20th, 1957, passed March 21st, 2015. Gregory Ray Armstrong was the name given by his parents. Greg was a 1975 graduate of Bullitt Central High School in Shepherdsville, Kentucky. He attended Georgetown College before entering the United States Navy. He picked up the nickname Big Lou when he reported aboard the USS Tunney in February of 1981. That nickname stuck with him the rest of his life. He was a giant among men, but gentle giant. He was a true man's man. Lou was a torpedoman's mate and a scuba diver while aboard the USS Tunney. After leaving his tour on board the Tunney, Big Lou continued his diving career and became a member of the EOD community, where he remained until his retirement. He was a retired Master Chief with the United States Navy, having served 20 years. During his illustrious career in the Navy, Lou had quite an assortment of major accomplishments and awards. It reads like a book of who's who. He never bragged about any of his accomplishments. He never had a wall at his home showing it off. A lot of these awards were kept away in a 3-ring binder. His annual evaluations were full of phrases like excellent communicator, well-liked, team player, zero discrepancy, directly responsible for the outstanding performance of the unit, expert supervisor. His service book reads like a great novel. One particular assignment Big Lou considered one of his greatest accomplishments. From 1997 to 1998, he was assigned as the operations chief at Explosive Ordnance Disposal Mobile Unit 5, Naval Station Guam. Big Lou deployed to Vietnam, Cambodia, and the region as a member of the Joint Task Force Full Accounting. The mission to Cambodia resulted in the recovery of the remains of 5 missing American servicemen killed in action. Their remains were repatriated to the United States and turned over to their families. All were buried with full military honors. For his efforts, Big Lou received a letter of gratitude from Mr. Kenneth M. Quinn, United States Ambassador to Cambodia, and a letter of appreciation from Terry L. Tucker, Brigadier General, United States Army, and Commander of the Joint Task Force, Full Accounting. Big Lou was the dedicated speaker of one of our early 4th of July celebrations, and we paid tribute to him as he did then, as he paid tribute to the missing in action and the POWs. Lou continued to be a big supporter of the EOD community after he retired from active duty and was heavily involved in the EOD Warrior Foundation. Lou was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer shortly after our 2012 4th of July memorial service. During his battle with cancer, he remained very positive and never, ever gave up. Lou was preceded in death by a son, Ian Armstrong. Greg is survived by his parents, Harold Ray Armstrong, Catherine Lewis Pogue Armstrong of the Kentucky, his wife of 31 years, Robin, who I believe is here, his daughter, Caitlin, who is also here, brothers Brad, who is here, John, who is unfortunately could not be with us, Hilton, his sisters Terry, who is here, Sherry Blakely, who is here, and a grandson, Giovanni Armstrong. We will all truly miss Big Lou Armstrong. And now Craig has some, yes. Craig. And now Craig again.
We're doing your reading before we go to Sergeant Kinsey.
A little history on Big Lou. He got that name when he reported aboard the Tunney. I gave it to him. I had a knack of giving all the shipmates, young shipmates that came on board, a nickname. And I chose Big Lou because his last name was Armstrong. I knew who Louis Armstrong was. Interesting enough, as Bob said, he carried that name all his life, and my understanding that even after he retired 20 years later, it wasn't until then that his wife realized that wasn't his real name. He was Tremendous inspiration to all of us. Yes. A tradition here we have during our tribute section is for all able-bodied wounded warriors, veterans, and active duty to form up in formation in front of our tribute guests as we render a hand salute in honor of them. At this time, I ask you to join my fellow shipmates, you wounded warriors, veterans, and active duty, in this gesture of respect and honor. Please form up on our distinguished guest, Vice Admiral John Byrd.
In the cold, cold grin, wherefore many more have gone. Lay me down in the cold, cold grin. Many more have gone. When they come, I will stand my ground. Stand my ground. I'll never be afraid. Thoughts of him take away my fear. Sweat and blood hide my veil of tears. Once a year, say a prayer for me. Close your eyes and remember me. Ne'er more shall I see the sun, for I fell to a gentleman's gun. Lay me down in the cold, cold ground, wherefore many more have gone. Lay me down in the cold, cold ground, wherefore many more have gone. Wherefore many more have gone.